Well, thank you everyone for joining. This is AdAdapted's second lottery webinar, which is really exciting. We'll have some more, this year as well. This specific webinar is structured around lottery ad tech challenges and how to overcome those challenges this upcoming fiscal year. So in terms of a agenda, right, we will start with introductions. And then we'll sort of hit on these main topics of this webinar, right, which are shortening the customer journey, being able to capture new, younger online lottery players, and as well as a very striking and important topic, navigating iOS 14.5. We know that's on everyone's mind these days, and just some knowledge from what we're seeing in the market and how that can sort of adjust or modify your strategies going forward. And then end with, obviously, an opportunity for some questions and answers. All righty, so this is our lottery team. My name is Jacob Smith. I am, considered the lottery guru here at AdAdapted. I've been here for 2 years, having a lot of conversations with lotteries, both direct and agency side, from coast to coast. And so I will turn it over to Dan Rector for his introduction.
Hey, everybody. Nice to meet you. Dan Rector, been with the company for about 5 years now. Been working closely with the lottery space for not just AdAdapted, but other gigs before this. So happy to be here to talk a little about lottery tactics and ideas for fiscal 22.
And then Peteris.
Yes, hi. My name is Peteris Freimanis, and I'm the strategist at the team. So looking at strategies and way we need to adapt and move forward, and how do we move into the new ways of playing and following our consumers. So that's my role in this little team.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for the introductions. This will lead us to our first topic on shortening that customer journey, specifically in store. So Peteris, I'll let you take over.
Yes, absolutely. So if we take a look at how we approach lottery advertising and communication to our consumers, it's very heavy in the awareness piece. So we get awareness, we know how to get that. We get that with television ads, we get that with digital, we get that with out of home. But it doesn't really deliver on that conversion. It's further out from what people are doing, because we're reaching them at different times, but it's not the time when they're ready to buy, and we're right there when it can be a planned or on the spot kind of an impulse buy. So we're not really there. So, and if you think about the time and we talk to them, and you drive by by a billboard, or you sit on your phone at home on your couch. The time from that end when we speak to them until they actually go to purchase, that can be days, which drops off in terms of people thinking about it and remembering about it. So it's really important that we come down that funnel and closer to the point of sale where they can actually go in and buy a ticket in any kind of a kiosk or in the grocery stores. So if you go to the next slide, we really need to think about going from this traditional awareness driving about our games and our jackpots, because at home, at different places, because of those days I mentioned, to more of a conversion or actionable ad. So we need to talk about a strategy that brings more action quicker. So what does that mean? That means that we need to be closer to them where they can actually buy the ticket. And as such, we can take a look at what are those options and sort of how do we think about how these strategies can come to life, and what does that actually mean? Well, on the next slide, we do have just a few examples of what can be done and what are good things to do. For example, there's a Kentucky lottery did a Kroger pilot where you could buy the lottery ticket in the checkout lane. So you're right there, you're ready to buy, you're purchasing anyway, so you can buy it on the spot. It's a reminder. And people are often then, that's the impulse as well as the planned one who just forgot to buy the ticket. So you get that. Another way, of course, getting them there is talking to them while they're walking around in a grocery store, let's say. So while they're walking up and down the aisle and picking up their typical groceries, we want to be able to talk to them at that point. So that's looking at technology on mobile technology that allows us to speak to them on their phones in a way that we know they will also see. Make sure that we are capturing their attention when they're so close, because when they're in the grocery store, even if they're not at the cash out, they will still remember to get that ticket on the way out. So those are kind of just a few places how we look at it. And it's the important piece here is that we need to start looking more deeper and deeper into how do we get the consumers very, very close at the purchase point so that we don't have this gap between the knowledge, the awareness of it to the purchase point. We don't want 5 days in between. We want it to be minutes away. So that's kind of the way we approach and think about it, and how we work, how we think the strategies need to continue to evolve as lottery advertising communication continues.
And Dan, I think this is your section right here, shortening the customer journey just via online. So DR, I'll pass it over to you.
For sure. Hi, everybody. So, if you're not already, doing iLottery or being able to make transactions online with the lottery, I'm sure you know that is a hot space that's quickly growing. Some states have already adopted this, others are thinking about it. And a lot of times when I talk to clients and groups in this space, they view online lottery as a way to attract maybe some younger audiences, right? Different types of consumers. Obviously, it opens up a whole new dimension of engagement and what you can do with digital CRM data you can capture on those consumers. So, a lot of the groups that I'm talking to are viewing this as a really strategic channel. However, right, it is a new channel, for a lot of these groups, and I think anyone would agree if we sort of took a peek under the hood with some of these groups, is everyone wants to have a better sort of user experience with this. And one of the challenges they have is so much of the focus is on capturing new consumers in this channel. However, once you capture them, it's about retaining those consumers. And usually within apps, there's a lot of drop off. Once somebody sort of downloads an app, they use it for a month, they get tired of it, and the retention's pretty low, in general across the whole industry, not just within lottery. And so when we think about retention and how we can hook this up with media, it's super important that we have a streamlined process when we can, advertise, hey, Mega Millions is, $300 million as we usually get a ticket, buy online. From that click into the app or the cart to make that transaction, one of the issues that the lottery has, and it's not just lottery, it's other groups as well, and grocery and other groups that have these types of apps where you can transact online, is it's sort of a cumbersome experience. There's a lot of, sort of checkpoints along the way to conversion. And some are better than others, but one of the issues is, in my background's in e-commerce and SaaS, and one of the rules of thumb is every click that you introduce from that initial engagement to the actual conversion when they put in their credit card and press buy, you lose about 50% of your traffic. So that first step, you show an ad, they click, they go to a landing page, maybe it opens up the app, you'll go from 100 to 50, right? In that example, if you have 100 clicks, you go to 50, then 50 goes to 25, but that next click, 25 goes to 12 and a half, and you get the idea. And so one of the key strategies for anyone who's trying to transact on online, right, not just for lottery, but also the industry in general, is this fanatical, sort of thinking around how do I condense or shorten that customer journey where I can get one click and it either goes right into the cart, or I can minimize those steps on the way in. And some of our clients are looking at and investing in different ways to do that. So the next slide, Jacob. So one of the things that we can do to help decrease that sort of all those steps from point A to point B where we're advertising a game is being able to integrate an SDK where basically that user, if you know that user is a user of the app, right? We can help do this, or maybe others, but we own the patent on this special one-click type of thing, where if this code's embedded in the app, we know when we serve media to a user off platform that this person in this case is a Kentucky Lottery consumer, right? And we know what their card ID is, what their user ID is, and when they click, it can take that item and just drop it off directly into the cart off that click. Now, obviously, some games this makes more sense for than others. So, for instance, if you're doing an easy pick right on Mega or Power, right, you can click and you can just drop that in one click. But if there's things where they have to pick the game, so this is sort of more useful for games that are, you know, scratchers, fast play, you know, draw games on easy pick, you know, sweepstakes entries, those types of things where you don't have to pick numbers or anything like that. This can really help reduce those steps because you skip the login, you skip, you know, going to the product detail page, you skip picking the numbers and all that stuff. So if you want to advertise easy pick, you know, that kind of thing, this is a really powerful way to sort of shorten those steps. And so like in our earlier example in the last slide, you know, where you have 4 or 5 clicks to go get to that conversion, with something like this makes it really easy to retain your customers and easy to, you know, retain that revenue and get repeat revenue because it's really easy for them to buy, right? We're not making them go through a whole bunch of extra steps where people may fall off. So, you know, in this example, if you have 100 clicks, you got 100 items there in the cart for purchase. So that's a big win and something that I know is on the top of the list for a lot of folks as we come into fiscal 22. Oh, Jacob, you're on mute. There you
Yep.
go.
So thank you, DR. Yep, and thank you, Peteris, as well. So we can see the overall concept or challenge that we are discussing here, which is how do state lotteries condense that customer journey, right? Both in store, be it targeting consumers when that interest is peaked and they are in a position to buy, is just absolutely critical. And it's a challenge that there are multiple solutions that are out there to sort of shorten that customer journey. And I think like Peteris mentioned, one is targeting those consumers when they're in store. DR mentioned one where we are shortening that customer journey and that online experience via reducing those clicks, right? All with the purpose of making it as easy as possible for a consumer to purchase. And this is sort of a segue into this next topic, which is how do we sort of capture these online players or new audiences? And not only that, but how do we retain their interests to keep them coming back in purchasing, right? So one of the ways that you can sort of do this is through enhanced targeting and obviously building a sustainable audience for the future of lottery. So what do we mean by that, right? In the conversations that I'm having with lotteries and Lottery Direct and agencies coast to coast is this dire need to engage in this increasingly important millennial audience. Obviously, the graphic on the right is a great visual for understanding why this is important. Not to say that more, let's say, use the word mature audiences are not playing lottery. That's not entirely the case. It's more so where does the future lie for lottery? And that's definitely in millennials, right? Younger audiences. And where do these audiences live? Well, they tend to live in mobile, right? So being able to build and structure your media plan and strategy around targeting these younger audiences and younger consumers, and when I say younger, obviously age compliant consumers, that have this need and craving to be tech savvy and want it now, right? So these younger audiences that is sort of on the top of all of lottery's minds, it coincides with the idea of shortening that customer journey because obviously this younger audience is more of a want it now sort of audience. So it's critically important when you think about that challenge and ways to sort of combat that challenge and overcome it through tapping into some of these exclusive targeting capabilities and reaching younger audiences that will, at the end of the day, be retained audiences for future campaigns and initiatives, and just stressing the importance on that. Another way to do this, obviously, is through applying a more personal approach or a tactic. When you think about these targeted audiences, right? In some ways that we do that, or some ways that you can do that, right? As an example here through Mike, right? Mike clearly likes $20 scratchers, higher ticketed items. and plays certain specific games, right? And that could be draw games as well. So he prefers Mega over, say, Powerball. Being able to remember and retarget those younger audiences at those influential buying phases is critical when you're talking about, again, shortening that customer journey and building upon that retention and loyalty. So I'm sure most attendees on the call are at least mildly familiar with some of these targeting tactics. But ones that I really want to hone on, again, are being able to bridge that gap between online versus in-store and sort of what that means, given the fact that every consumer preference is different, and understanding where the technology and audience is leaning, being a little bit more mobile, being a little more tech savvy, being a little more want it now, and being able to understand those preferences is obviously extremely important in any sort of media plan, or fiscal year planning. Tying into that personalization, we've been hitting on that pretty hard throughout this webinar, and just stressing the importance of that, right? Because every player plays differently, and that goes across generations as well. Targeting demos, again, there's no easy way to sort of talk about demographics when we're talking about different lotteries in different parts of the country, but understanding who that target audience is, how it's changing, how it's developing. And we'll get into some of those solutions on, how to find these players, and again, why that's important. And then, lastly, this is a very interesting topic, I think, in terms of when we talk about capturing online consumers and that retention. I know a state lottery recently implemented a ability to scan your ticket via the mobile app or plug in the code to their online website that's directly linked to their bank account. And when I think of user retention, and I think of as myself as a millennial, and what gets me to come back to that lottery experience, it goes back to the easing the user experience, making it so there's a reason and a purpose for me to come back, besides just checking on the newest Mega Millions or Powerball pool, right? So being able to expand and modernize that web experience, is just one example or one way, and I know a lot of lotteries are doing this, but just stressing the importance of getting this younger audience, capturing their attention and getting them motivated to come back to your site, is going to be critical, not in this coming fiscal year, right? But we're talking years to come. So it's big picture, but it's in the conversations that we are having, it is a heightened topic, and there are some solutions to that as well. So leading into some of these solutions, right, we're suggesting as sort of consultants in this space to be partnering with vendors who can apply both, obviously, online and offline. Again, those individual consumer preferences and how they play. And again, building upon that knowledge of who is, those in-store shoppers, those convenience store shoppers versus the ones who are engaging more in an online strategy. But not only that, when you segment those two audiences, offline and online, being able to capture that retention for your online experience, as well as being able to shorten that customer journey for consumers that are, say, shopping in convenience stores, gas stations, retail locations, is all critical, right? So I know, AdAdapted obviously is capable of some of these things. I know Dan mentioned that patented one-click technology, but there are obviously a lot of vendors out there that can sort of dive into this individual user experience and targeting, again, that younger upcoming generation, where there is a craving from these lotteries. When we talk about frequency rates, and fatigue, right? And some of the more mature generations of seeing these ads constantly, building out that pool is going to be critical for strategy, again, in this fiscal year and in the years moving forward. So navigating iOS 14.5, this is a really hot topic. We are in a unique position to provide some updates as to what we are seeing on this front. And so Peteris, I will let you take this section away.
Sure. So we obviously all have heard and know that the new iOS 14.5 will is asking for permission for us to be able to cross, and that cross advertise across apps. And of course, that is buzzing. Industry is buzzing about it. What will that mean, and how do we see it? We need to, first of all, before we all get too worried about it, remember that it's Apple's side, not the Android side, right? Which we all know. We also don't really know what the long-term impact is going to be on this. It's very early still. People still need to update their phones and their apps to get the question, to see where we land. And we do know it's happening out there. We know it's going to have an impact. It's too soon yet to say exactly what's going to happen. And that's true for the whole industry. But of course, there are ways we need to start thinking about it and think about what are those strategies and how do we think about dealing with this, and how do we continue our typical way or not typical, our way to communicate with our consumers. So one way, of course, is to make sure that we're tapping into sort of first-party data of those opt-in users. So making sure that we know where they are and continue working with them through vendors that can have this kind of data available. Personalization, as we talked before, not only in lottery, but also in general, is very important, because that will become more and more important when people start picking who they want to see, in what apps they want to see what, will be extremely important, because that is also how the younger audience and the mobile audience is working, and this is the reason why Apple is doing this. And of course, working with closed private marketplaces, so PMPs, is a way of making sure you're inside a network of apps where this does not apply. We see retailers doing this today, where they can target their own app users within their app. And those environments are going to be becoming more and more important, because you are getting you don't have to go outside, and people don't have to opt in to see your ad, because you are within in a closed network, so to say. So those are things we need to continue working on. I think more and more of the industry's apps and the way we think about it will go towards this private marketplace, but it's key to keep an eye on that and see who can offer you that kind of an audience that is closed off, and where the Apple iOS 14.5 is not having that big of an impact.
Awesome. So, that was obviously that last topic of those three branching conversations, but we'll open it up to some questions if we see any come through. So I'm looking. Peteris or Dan, is there anything that has come through yet? I'm sharing my screen, so I'm unable to see that info.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything come through yet.
Okay.
I think Jesse's watching the chat.
Okay, cool.
All right, cool. I think we got one here. So how do we implement the one-click integration? So that I'll reserve for people smarter than me. But in terms of like how ours works, at a high level, it's basically implementing our deep link SDK, right? And so with that deep link SDK, that allows us to use a common identifier, right, for basically who is a user of that lottery app, and then be able to recognize that with a common ID as we're serving media to them in the different areas across our private marketplace. And when that integration is there, what it does is takes the payload or whatever is in that ad and drops it off into the cart after it's clicked in the background, right? So there's no sort of jumping from screens. It's sort of a non-disruptive ad. But next time that person opens the app, whatever that game was that they sent to their cart will already be in there next time they open the app.
Let's see, did another one just come through? I can't tell. I just want to make sure that we're hitting questions as they're coming in.
All right, so here's one from Jen. What are the best practices in reaching millennials? So yeah, and there's a whole bunch of different ways to sort of reach the millennial crowd. And I think every lottery group agrees that, finding younger audiences is mission critical, right? As we think about 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now. And so, obviously, millennials live in their phone, right? And so a good place to find them would be, doing mobile ads or in-app media, right? That's a great place to do it. If there's, the Netflix and Hulu and stuff like that, because a lot of younger folks are moving away from cable TV. So that's another good place. If you can find a way to get exposure in those avenues. But I would say mobile is not a trend, it's here to stay, right? And I think if you went to a restaurant or you went to a bar or anywhere, you'd see people with their head in their phone, right? And so figuring out how do we get there in the right places where they're located is a great strategy to capture millennial attention. But then more importantly, after that, I've read a number of studies about, there's an increase in sort of demand for UI from these younger folks, right? And it goes from anywhere from your banking to groceries to anything else, and the same would apply to lottery. We have to make it easy for them to engage, right? So if you do catch that impulse and you show a millennial in an app on their phone that Mega Millions is $1 bazillion, this week, and you want them to transact, you have to make that process easy and seamless as expected, right? That they have a good UI. Otherwise, it'll be hard to retain them as they'll get frustrated and leave, right? And so, again, that kind of goes back to some of the points we talked about earlier, which is about, make it easy, find younger audiences, be where they are, which is in their phone and some of these other places, and make sure that that's a focus, because that's how you're going to grow new revenue, by capturing new audiences. All right, got one from Sam here. Let's see what this one is. So, different targeting abilities appear to be the right strategy to navigate iOS and IDFA changes. If you had to pick the most important targeting parameters to utilize when you don't have access to certain now untracked information, what would you recommend? So I'm going to reread that one more time. It's a little bit of a heavy one there. Yeah. So targeting, right strategy. So in terms of the targeting parameters, I mean, there's that's sort of a big question. I think when a lot of people start thinking about iOS 14.5 and the changes, one is they freak out when they see the early news. I think there was some article floating around 96% of people sort of opt out of sharing their data. But we can't see how that would be a statistically significant number, right? So, last iOS update, I was talking to our engineering folks and they said, hey, you really need 3 to 6 months before you see even enough of a statistical sample to even get a sense of what people are thinking. And one, it's the default setting when you go in is, not sharing your data. But when they open Facebook or they open something else and says, hey, if you want to, get the full experience of this app, you have to share your data, then people switch, right? So you need to have a little bit of time for that to sort of settle in. So that being said, going back to the original question, what kind of tactics or targeting parameters make sense to combat that? One is I don't think it's a huge issue yet. It will be later. But going forward, right, what we're going to need to do is, as industry folks, is we have to cozy up with people who aggregate first-party data and are able to use that data across the private marketplace that they own the access to, right? Because these changes only apply to programmatic media off platform. Once they're in a network and that first party data exists, you can still do sort of what you do normally, right, within that user space. So great question, heavy question, but if you want to learn more about that or talk more about that, we're happy to schedule a call with you. Okay. All right, so this one's a question from Tom. How can lotteries avoid KYC elements to allow for impulse buy from non-registered players while still staying within our legal boundaries? Or will that be required in some form? Also, what is the thoughts on reaching Zoomers, right, Generation Z, who are just becoming of age to purchase? So we got a two-part question here. So how to avoid? So I'm not totally understanding the first part of the question, right, with the KYC elements. I'm not sure what KYC is. It Kentucky Lottery? So I'm not really sure how to weigh in on that one, Tom, but we're happy to talk about it a little bit more once we get that sort of laid in. But within the non-registered players, yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the question means in there. And then in terms of the Gen Z folks, I think similar approach to the millennials, right? I think you're dealing with a real mobile heavy audience. I know gaming is huge in that community, so maybe trying to cozy up with gamer type environments in terms of context, you're probably going to see that skew heavily towards Gen Z. So a couple ideas there on that front. So again, sorry, I didn't fully understand the first part of the question, but please shoot us an email afterwards, and we can set up some time to chat through that in a little bit more detail.
So I know we're a little over time. DR, do we have any more questions that have come in?
Nope, I don't see anything else here.
Cool. Well, we appreciate everyone's time. We will be definitely having more lottery webinars. We'll probably have another one at least before the end of the year. And so stay tuned on those, and please reach out with any questions, comments. We're obviously always here to help. And we will be shooting a copy of this deck, this presentation, to everyone that attended. And then obviously, this offer here of 2 complimentary consumer polls that we're able to provide for anyone that attended. So again, we really appreciate everyone's attendance and joining us today. We look forward to having more of these in the future, on topics that, again, are really on the top of mind that we are seeing with lotteries across the country. So we do offer that sort of unique touch, and we're excited to move forward with future webinars and answering some of these additional questions. So thank you everyone for attending, and we'll catch up soon.
All right, thanks guys.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Thanks everyone.